evening and welcome to Chesapeake Public Schools Family Empowerment Webinar presented by the Office of Family and Community Engagement. I am Lisa Carey, one of the FACE specialists. Our office, which is under the Department of Engagement, seeks to create meaningful partnerships in order to inspire, engage, empower families, educators, and community agencies to support the initiatives of Chesapeake Public Schools. We are typically available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and can be reached by our main phone line at 757 482 5923, or you can reach us by email at FACE at cpschools.com. We are excited to offer our families a course catalog entitled Peak Parent University that outlines all of our events for the school year. You can also catch up on pre recorded webinars, access a wealth of educational resources, and make community connections to promote your family's well being. Please visit www.cpschools.com and search for Peak Parent University. Tonight, we are excited to present to you information regarding the Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Services, also known as DARS. The mission of DARS is to improve the employment, quality of life, security, and independence of older Virginians with disabilities, and their families. Before we go any further, I want to remind families that the chat feature has been disabled. Therefore, if you have any questions, please place them in the Q&A located at the bottom of the screen. We will answer questions throughout the webinar. At this time, I would like to turn the program over to Sharon Willis, a transition specialist for Chesapeake Public Schools, who will introduce our team of experts for this evening. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening. I'm Sharon Willis, one of the transition specialists with Chesapeake Public Schools, Department of Exceptional Learning. The Department of Exceptional Learning has 4 full-time transition specialists that serve all middle schools and high schools: Chesapeake Career Center, Chesapeake Center for Student Success, and Project Search. Transition specialists also serve as consultants to CSEP. The special education transition specialists are responsible for planning, coordinating, and facilitating of an outcome-oriented process which promotes movement from school to post-school activities. Please allow me to introduce our transition specialists. Tonight, we have Regina Stowe.
Hi there.
We have Dr. Frankie Dampierre. And we have
Hi.
Christina Trinello. As you can see, we have the schools that Ms. Stowe, Dr. Dampierre, Christina Trinello, and myself served. So take the advantage to do a screenshot of this now or take a picture of it if you need to contact your transition specialist. Okay, Lisa, you can go to the next one. Tonight we have the pleasure of having Matt Olson, who's the manager of our Portsmouth office for the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services. The Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services, their mission of DARS is to improve the employment, quality of life, security, and independence of older Virginians and Virginians with disabilities and their families. Presenting again on behalf is Matt Olson. The Portsmouth office serves Portsmouth, Suffolk, Chesapeake, and Franklin. The Portsmouth field office staff provides services to help Virginians with disabilities prepare for, secure, retain, and/or regain employment and become more independent and self-sufficient. Mr. Olson has worked for DARS for over 14 years as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, pre-EX transition services counselor, and currently is the manager of the Portsmouth office. Mr. Olson has years of experience and a wealth of knowledge to share with us this evening. Without further ado, I present to you Mr. Matt Olson.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Let me turn my volume up here a little bit. All right. Well, thank you, Sharon, for that. And like Sharon said, my name is Matt Olson. I'm the manager of the Portsmouth office, DARS, and formerly a pre-S counselor, transition counselor, and substance misuse counselor. So kind of dived into a lot of different caseloads here. So tonight I'm going to talk to you guys about our services and kind of what we offer to students and adults. So our program is broken down into two parts. Over the last couple of years, we've broken our program down into a few parts here. So we have our pre-employment transition services, which are going to talk about in a minute. Those are kind of more for our high school students. And then our VR program is more of our adult program. So I'm going to kind of talk about both of them because they are different in different ways, and there's different criteria for each. So first, we're going to dive into our pre-employment transition services. Like I said, these are done with students in high school. We have a counselor. We have counselors in all 7 Chesapeake schools. So depending on which counselor or which school that student goes to determines what transition pre-S counselor they work with. A lot of our pre-S services, like I said, are done in school. They're usually done in group settings because again, it's a lot of we're trying to target a lot of students at one time, so we do them more in group settings. And then in the summer times, we kind of we do a little bit more when they're out of school. They can also participate in pre-S services over the summer. It's just ran in a different way. So there's 5 areas that we focus on in pre-S. We have job exploration, work-based learning, counseling on post-secondary, workplace readiness, and self-advocacy. Now, keep in mind too, not every student has to go through all 5 areas of pre-S because again, it's kind of tailored to the student and their needs. So a student won't always have to go through all 5, and a student might not get all 5 depending on what their goals are, but they don't have to go through all 5 areas to complete pre-S. We kind of base it on their needs and the needs of the group. All right, so job exploration is the first one. So job exploration is kind of just the initial job exploration phase for students. So this is really where they're just kind of getting introduced to work and the different kinds of careers and industries, occupations, labor markets. So this is just kind of like most of all of our students go through this. This is one of the areas we emphasize the most is job exploration. Again, this is where they're exploring careers, exploring jobs, just kind of learning what work is. So this is kind of the initial phases of the 5. Like I said, we focus a lot on this category because this one is kind of the big one as far as, helping them understand what a job is, what different occupations are, and giving them a chance to kind of explore different jobs. And then, and these are just some examples, learning about career pathways, in-demand industries, occupations, labor market, again, career interests. Sometimes there might be guest speakers that come in and talk to the students about different jobs. I've had, different businesses come in and talk to us. And again, it's just anything that you're doing to explore jobs, it's usually under this category. All right, and then work-based learning. So work-based learning is more the hands-on part of, so, job exploration, we're kind of exploring jobs. Work-based learning, they're actually getting a chance to go out and try jobs. So a lot of this stuff kind of happens in the community, and a lot of this stuff kind of happens in the summers. So these are things like they'll go job shadowing. They might go on site tours to tour. Like I've taken groups to the Dollar Tree warehouse a few times and let them kind of explore different jobs. They might sit down with like a manager and do like an interview. So again, this is anything hands-on in the community where they're getting a chance to go out and try different things. Like I said, these usually take place in the summertime. And typically we have job coaches that help us with these. And again, they can be done on an individual basis, but sometimes they'll also take a group of students out as well. But we use a lot of vendors for this area, and the job coaches kind of take them out and do a lot of that job learning experiences in the community. You can flip. All right, so again, this is just some examples, workplace experience of volunteering. Sometimes the students get to do internships. Sometimes they can be paid, sometimes they can be non-paid, just depending on what they're looking for. But again, the biggest thing to remember with this is any hands-on experience. The student gets a chance to go out and explore hands-on. All right, and then the next one is post-secondary. So again, and what I talk about is a lot of students won't go through all 5 areas because some students won't always need all 5 areas. This area, we kind of focus on those students that are maybe wanting to go to college or trade school or VOTEC school. So again, not every student goes through this area, but this is kind of where we just help them on, how to prepare for college, the FAFSA and, how to fill out that out, how to ask for accommodations in college. Cause like we always tell people, there's no IEPs in college, but there are accommodations. So just trying to help students kind of navigate. I've taken students on college tours before, like through TCC and things. So just anything that's kind of post-secondary opportunities for students. Again, this can be done in the school year or in the summer, but just kind of helping them understand what college is going to be like, basically, and what the expectations are going to be and how to advocate for themselves.
Hey, Matt, we have one question.
Okay.
We have a parent asking, her son is a super senior at age 19 and will graduate this year with a standard diploma, but has an IEP since the age of 3. Is he eligible for post-secondary DARS services?
Yes.
All right, thank you. That was the only one so far.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for tracking those. I'm trying to no. All right. And again, these are just some examples, identifying financial aid options, financial aid applications. Again, we kind of talked about all these examples, mission requirements, things like that. And then work readiness is the next one. And again, work readiness is another category that we kind of emphasize use with a lot of students. And that's work readiness is more like when they're kind of ready to start actually working. So, we've done some exploration, we've looked at some hands-on stuff, we've tried some different options. Now it's kind of work readiness is kind of now they're getting ready to go into the job and what are those requirements for a job. So we're working on soft skills, social skills, independent living skills, how to talk to your manager, how to clock out, how to do time, all that stuff that would be important on a job would be under this work readiness category. So again, this is one that we kind of would do more with students who are ready to go out into the workforce or maybe don't need those other skills, but are kind of ready to get out there and hit the ground running. And so, this is kind of another category that not every student would probably go through as one of the areas, but this is kind of one of the areas that we kind of do towards the end. I look at this area was more like juniors and seniors, super seniors, people that are 22 and exiting out. Some of the ones that maybe the standard diploma students, a lot of times, sometimes they're kind of ready to go out there and junior. So kind of upperclassmen are where we focus on this area in. But again, things like hygiene, financial literacy, using transportation, getting to and from work is a big thing. So helping them navigate that. The transportation system in this area is a little bit hard to navigate. So trying to help them kind of navigate that and what mode of transportation they're going to take, just make sure they're getting to work every day. And then the last one is self-advocacy. Now I will say this one we emphasize with every student because I think everybody needs self-advocacy no matter what area they're in. So this is a category that we really focus a lot of time on. Because again, they need to know about their disability accommodations, self-awareness, interests, things like that. So this area I think is one of the most important ones because it helps the students really generate, learn how to advocate for themselves. So this one we're always kind of hammering on, and this one can mix into the other 4 areas as well because we're always kind of doing it with every area, but it does have its own area. But we do emphasize this one quite a bit because I think this one's definitely the most important of all of them. And so other examples, accepting feedback, understanding the rights, responsibility, becoming self-determined, set goals, problem solving, just again, anything that helps them with self-advocacy, we're kind of emphasizing. And like I said, this is the area that we cover quite a bit. All right. All right, so now I'm going to break down. So pre-S services, what I want to say about them is it's any student from the age of 14 to 22 who has a documented disability. so can can participate in pre-S services. Pre-S services are free of cost. There's no financial component to that. And again, as long as the student is 14 to 22, and again, and when we say 14, they do have to also be in high school because we only work with the high school students because we don't have it. We're not stretched thin enough to work with middle school. So we really do have to focus on the high schools because we just don't have enough people. But anyway, anyone between 14 and 22 that is in high school or even can be in college. If someone's 19 and in college, they can still get pre-S services because they're still under that age of 22, can qualify for pre-S services. Typically, they are referred through your transition coordinators. The four lovely ladies that are on this call with us, they're usually the streamline for us to get those referrals. So typically the school will send them to us and then they get assigned to the transition counselor that covers that school. And then they start working with them on these pre-employment services. All right, and I just said all this pre-S services at the age of 22. Sorry. All right, so then again, VR services are more for our adult services. So these are again for services more after high school, kind of when they're getting ready to kind of transition out. And some of our VR services examples like vocational counseling, vocational evaluation. This is kind of when we can do like our VR program, our adult program is where we can do a lot more of the assessments and things. Like a situational assessment is like, for example, let's say a client's interested in bagging groceries. Then what would happen for a situational assessment? They would go out with a job coach on the site to an actual job site, and they would bag the groceries just along with everybody else that's working there. But the job coach would be assessing them to see if that's going to be an appropriate goal, or if it's something they even like. So typically we use assessments for students that either have no idea what they want to do or students who maybe have an idea, but we don't know if it's appropriate. So we'll do a lot of assessments to kind of help them define a vocational goal and identify like a positive goal that they want. And then supported employment is working with a job coach. We do have job coaches. What DARS does is DARS pays them the money and they work with the students to help them find jobs in the community. But again, the overall goal of our VR program is that a student is able to work in a competitive environment. So competitive employment means people with and without disabilities. So Targets, Walmarts, and then with minimal support, because eventually what happens is once they get a job, DARS and the job coach will start to fade out. We're not there forever. And then the client has to be able to, be able to work that job on their own with minimal support because we are not a 24/7 support. We do eventually fade out. And if they need 24/7 support all the time, that's not the part that we do. We have to be able to fade out so that they can, and then they're able to work independently with minimal support. That's kind of the overall goal of our VR program, the adult program. And again, job coaching, reasonable accommodations on a job. We do have assistive technology and occupational therapists on staff. And sometimes if there's clients that get a job and they might need some accommodations or, things like that, we'll have our occupational therapists go out and shadow them at their job and kind of make recommendations for different equipment, things like that might be beneficial to them. All right. And so, our VR program, again, and I kind of break it down as our adult program. Again, there's a different criteria. So again, you have to have a disability, you have to live in Virginia. And the third piece of that is your disability has to cause an impediment to employment based on people your same age, gender, sex. So typically what that is, that's why when we do our VR process, that's why we'll request medical records and things, because we use those to help us determine if the disability is an impediment to employment. Again, whereas our pre-S services, as long as you're a student in high school and you have an IEP, you can get pre-S services. Our adult program, there is a different eligibility criteria because it is an adult program. So therefore you have to have a disability, you have to live in Virginia, your disability has to cause an impediment to employment. And again, that big piece is you have to be able to get a job and be able to work that job with minimal support at the end as DARS fades out. So those are kind of the biggest difference between the two. Again, a lot of times the transition coordinators will typically refer students to us through the high school. But students can also call our main number, which is on here. We do referrals over the phone. So people can just call in, give their referral information over the phone, and then I assign them a counselor, and then they reach out to them to get the appointment scheduled. So there's a variety of different ways a person can be referred. This is kind of the process. So, the application's the first step. So that's basically the application process is where they come in for the intake. So the counselor's going to ask them a lot of questions, get a lot of information, have them sign a lot of releases. And then the eligibility piece, that's when we take those releases and we request records and we use those documentation to determine if they're eligible for our program. And then once a person's eligible, then we start kind of diving into the looking for the job, figuring out the things that they need assistance with on the job, things like that. Now, of course, if a person gets SSI and SSDI, our VR services are free of cost, so they don't have to pay anything. However, if a person does not get SSI and SSDI, then it's based on income. So, for example, if it's someone who is 18, 19, and they don't get benefits, but their parents claim them, then it would be based on the parents' income. So there is a piece of our VR program that is financially that people may have to pay for. It's not a complete entitlement program. So there is a financial piece to our VR program. And depending on money and benefits determines if someone would have to pay for some of those services. We do have free services, but like things like a job coach would be something that, we wouldn't be able to pay for if a person wasn't financially eligible. So things like that, but there are also internal staff that help people find jobs. So there are services that are free of cost, but if someone's going to need more extensive services, they might have to pay depending on their financial situation. All right. And I know it's a lot of information. I'm gonna, if they want to provide my email address on here, anybody can always reach out to me at any time with additional questions. It is a lot of information, but what I kind of do is try to break it down with like pre-S is high school and VR is after high school. That's kind of the difference between the two. But again, I know it's a lot of information, but anybody can always feel free to reach out to me if they have questions. I'm willing to answer any questions anybody has after, you can email me, call me. I'm available most of the time. But again, does anybody have any questions they want to type in?
Matt, while we give people a chance to ask any last minute questions, can you go ahead and tell us what your email is, just so that people can go ahead and write that down? Can you just say it out loud, and then we can also send it to them in an email?
Okay. It's matt.olson, OLSON, at DARS.Virginia spelled out.gov.
All right. Again, that's Matt, MATT.Olson, OLSON, at DARS, DARS .Virginia, and you do have to spell Virginia out, .gov. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. And then also, what is the telephone number that we can reach you?
It's you can call 757-686-5004 and just ask to speak to Matt, and they'll transfer you to me. I only give you the main number because I'm not always in, but they'll transfer it to my cell phone. So yeah, just ask for me. Yep.
Perfect. And families, just to let you know, you also have the transition specialist list. Again, I've displayed that on the screen. You can also get in contact with your child's transition specialist for further information. I have another question that I heard that the pre-ETS did include high school and college, and the VR is only post-secondary. Is the overlap during post-secondary just the differences of the services?
Yeah, and also, and that's a good question, and I'll answer it by saying this too. Keep in mind, a student can be on a VR in our VR program. And as long as they're under 22 and still in school, they can still get those pre-S services as well. So yeah, our pre-S and VR can overlap each other. Because a person's on an adult caseload doesn't mean they can't get pre-S services as long as they meet that criteria, 14 to 22. We do have a lot of students on our adult caseloads that are in college and they still get those pre-S services even though they're on an adult caseload. So yeah, they can overlap.
And we also have an additional question.
Mhm.
Where can families get a list of jobs and careers that would meet their child's disability? Is there a listing of that somewhere?
Um, there's unfortunately not. That's kind of what we do with those assessments and things is try to match them up with different jobs. There's not really a concrete list out there of like what jobs someone can do based on their disability. That's kind of what we have to use the assessments and stuff to determine. But yeah, there's not like a concrete list anywhere because that a lot of that stuff can change as well. But yeah, that's kind of what we do. But there's a list of different like job openings and things, but not really matching them up with disabilities. That's kind of what we have to do in our process.
Okay, that's great to know. And then also, typically, how long is the process in finding employment for an individual?
It's case by case basis. So I always tell people, our process is not quick. And what I mean by that is like if someone needed a job yesterday, we're not the right agency because we're not only are we trying to find them the right job, we're trying to make sure we're addressing all the barriers to find them that right job. So our process can take a little bit longer depending on the person's, job, disability, accommodations. I have some clients that are on my caseload for you, and also what Greg, if you have someone in high school, they might be on the caseload longer because they have to go through high school first. So it really depends. I have some people on my case that they've been on there 3 or 4 years. I have some that come in, get a job right away. They only need a little bit of support and they're off the caseload within a year. It just really depends on the needs of the person and the job market, what they're looking to do, and what their skills are. So again, there's no real big time frame. It's going to depend on the person. But like I said, we've had some as quick as a year and some that stay on there for a few years because they just need that extra, kind of supports and stuff.
Okay, and last question, because then just
Mhm.
this one last question. As far as the counselors, do the individuals see the same counselor every time, or is it at different stages you go to the next counselor, or do you see the same person throughout the process?
We try to keep it same person. I have our office, we cover counselors are assigned based on the cities. So I have certain counselors that only cover Chesapeake, certain that only cover Suffolk, and some that only cover Portsmouth. So we try to keep them with the same counselor, but it doesn't always. Sometimes it depends on if one counselor has too many and one has less. It kind of depends. But we do try to keep them with the same person, but not always. Especially if they go from pre-S to VR, when they go to the adult side of things, they may get a different person because different people do adult and different people do pre-S. So they may get a different person if they transition between caseloads. Yeah. Um, but we
All right.
try to keep it as consistent as we can because
Okay.
they build a rapport with that person. So we want to keep it. And usually we've been pretty good with that. We haven't had a lot of people that have had to switch, but it does happen every once in a while.
Okay, and I have one more question. There's a person that said her son is 15. They put in an application, but this all sounds like it's for older individuals. Do you work with kids until they get to that age where they can actually work, or is
Mm.
15 too young?
No, if the student is 15, they're probably going to be better off in our pre-S program since they're younger. They're probably not quite ready for the adult side, but that would give us a couple years to work with that student to get them ready for then our adult services down the road. But yeah, that sounds like someone that would benefit from our pre-employment in the school. And the earlier we can get them in, the better. Because like I said, we used to get them in later and we weren't giving ourselves enough time. So, 14, 15 is we'd like to see them as early as we can get them because it gives us more time to work with them for sure. I'm looking at the question here. I see one, a senior at Western Branch. What is the length of time it takes from registration until you can receive services? Well, we don't currently have a wait list, so anytime someone's referred to our agency, we get started right away. Just to kind of give you a time frame, from the day we get the referral, the counselor has 10 days to reach out to the person and get something scheduled. So you hear back pretty quickly. But because we don't have any waiting list at this time, the process does move fast. Once you sign up and once your intake's done, it's going to start flowing. So you need to be ready. So you want to make sure you're ready to go because it is going to start flowing as soon as you get in. So, because what we see a lot of times is people sign up for services and then we start to jump into it and then they're like, oh wait, I'm not ready. So just make sure that if they're ready to get, if they're really serious about getting a job, once you apply, it's game time. So you just want to make sure that they're ready to go, because it is going to start off fast once you get started. So
All right. Thank you, Matt. Great questions. I'd like to thank the Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Services, especially Matt, for sharing your wealth of knowledge and regarding helping individuals with disabilities prepare for, secure, and retain and regain employment to become more independent and self-sufficient. We will send all the webinar registrants tonight's presentation once it's ready for YouTube. Should you have any other questions about tonight's webinar or need additional information, you can also reach out to FACE, F-A-C-E, at cpschools.com, or you can contact your transitional specialist, and we've also provided you with Mr. Olson's email and contact phone number. Thank you for joining us tonight, and remember, families and communities work better together. Have a great evening.